Welcome to Share Talk. Today I have the pleasure of talking to Joe Wiley, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Amryt Pharma. How are you today, sir?
Great, thanks, Steve.
As you're a new company for our listeners, could you tell us about yours and your management team's previous history of working in the sector, please?
Sure. So first of all, let me tell you about Amryt. We are a drug company focused on rare and orphan diseases. We have a singular strategic focus, developing products in rare and orphan diseases for which there is a very high unmet medical need. In terms of the team that we have together, we feel that we have a really strong team relative to our size. In fact, a lot of people would suggest we have a team you might expect to see in a larger company. My own background, I trained as a doctor, and I have been for the last 15 years or so in the investing and operational side of healthcare and pharmaceuticals. Prior to setting up Amryt, I worked for a group called Sofinova Ventures, who are one of the largest investment groups in the globe, based out of Menlo Park, California. I'm joined on my management team by Rory Nealon. Rory is our CFO and COO. His background is accounting, and before joining Amryt, he spent 12 years at Trinity Biotech, where he was involved in acquiring and integrating 14 different businesses. So huge amount of experience of integrating businesses, very relevant to what we are set up to do here at Amryt. Our Chief Medical Officer is Mark Summeray. He's a 20-year veteran of the industry. He's also a medical doctor, and he joins us from Agerian, from whom we've just licensed our latest product. And the management team is completed by Michele Belandi, who before joining us ran Shire's European business. So he ran a billion-plus business for Shire. We also are really delighted to have as our chairman the founder of Shire, Harry Stratford. Harry founded Shire, built it into what is today the world's largest orphan drug company. And after Shire went on to build Stracan or Prostracan. We also have Ray Stafford on our board. Ray was previously head of the Middle East and head of Europe for Forest Labs, so very a focused commercial pharmaceutical executive. And James Culverwell as well is on the board. James was previously the head of equity research in pharmaceuticals and biotech for Merrill Lynch here in the City of London.
So quite a comprehensive team, all with previous experience in the sector. Could you just further define what you would class as a orphan pharmaceutical company?
Sure. So as an orphan pharmaceutical company, we are developing products for so-called orphan or rare diseases. Orphan diseases are categorized as those that affect less than 200,000 patients in the US, or less than 5 per 10,000 patients here in Europe. That equates to about 250,000 patients here in Europe. So affecting small numbers of patients. And traditionally, if you had suffered from an orphan disease, there were no pharmaceuticals that were developed to treat your disease because of the small numbers of patients that were affected. That was deemed unfair by the governments on both sides of the Atlantic, and legislation was enacted to help promote the development of products in rare and orphan diseases. And that legislation has had an effect. The legislation in the US came in the Orphan Drugs Act in 1983, and there are 7,000 orphan diseases in the world. And in 83, when that Orphan Drugs Act came out, there was only 38 drugs approved for a so-called orphan disease. By 2015, that had increased to over 550. So quite a dramatic increase in the number of drugs. But as you can tell, 550 still leaves a long way to go from 7,000. And it's predicted that orphan drugs will grow significantly over the next number of years and be just under 20% of prescription drugs by 2020. So this is a growing sector of the pharmaceutical space.
So in regards to your team's past histories and obviously yourselves concentrating on the sort of orphan products, Would you say that you would be looking towards new products, and how does that sort of fit in to your current business model?
Yeah, that's entirely right. So we are focused on developing new products for patients with rare diseases for whom generally there's really no other therapy. And you'll see that as I described the drugs that we're developing, and indeed the drug that we've recently licensed that's on the market. The critical thing is we are focused on this space because the unmet need, as I said, is very large. But also, as a small company like Amryt, we have the wherewithal and the ability to not only develop the drugs through the clinical trials which are required to get products approved. In rare diseases, those trials tend to be smaller and the approval process tends to be somewhat simpler. But also, we are focused on acquiring, developing and commercializing products in these rare diseases. And when you look to commercialize in the rare and orphan disease space, because the numbers of patients are quite small, there's a commensurately small number of physicians who we need to speak with who would prescribe our products. And therefore, as a small company, we would require a relatively small footprint in order to do that. And you'll see that as I described the product that we've just licensed.
Yeah, before we talk about the products, you obviously touched there on the journey of getting the products to market, sort of the phase clinical trials that you do. Could you just give us a brief outline to what that sort of journey is before we touch on the products and where they are on that sort of journey?
Sure. So we are focused on acquiring and in-licensing products which are in either late-stage clinical development or are already marketed and are commercial. We do not have, we don't ever intend to have a research capability. Our business is to acquire products developed by other people and then to develop those through the final stage, so usually one clinical trial away from approval, or in the case of Lojuxta, which we've just licensed, to take over the marketing of that product. So very near term to approval or at approval.
Excellent. So you're more on the later studies, as in getting them into, for instance, the NHS for them to trial the drugs, as opposed to testing the drugs to see if they work. So there's effectively, potentially, less of a risk with the product being marketable. Yeah,
so we would do the clinical trials ourselves. We generally, if we're doing clinical trials, we'll in-license products generally at what's called phase 3, which is the final or pivotal study required to get a product approved. We conduct that study ourselves for those development opportunities, and then once we complete that, we would seek to get approval and to launch those products ourselves. Or, as I said, we will acquire products which are already through that process, as you say, and have been approved. Generally, the approval in orphan drugs is either pan-European, or in the case of the FDA, would be for the whole of the US. So you get a European approval or a US approval, and then that enables you to launch the products across Europe or indeed in the US.
So could you share with us then the products you've got and obviously what stages they're at within their sort of development realm as to getting the product to market?
Sure. So since setting up Amryt, we have acquired two companies, a company in Germany and a company in Switzerland. The company in Germany we acquired had a compound which is called Episalvan. It's a dermatology product. It's a topical gel and it's used to promote skin healing. That product has got orphan status in a very rare disease called epidermolysis bullosa, or EB. And we are bringing that product forward in EB into a pivotal study, as I described earlier, in Q1 next year. That will be hopefully subject to regulatory approval, a single pivotal study for approval in both the US and in Europe. And we're very excited about that product because EB is a disease that where the proteins in the skin are defective. So these are children with a genetic defect in the proteins in their skin, and they're born with this condition, and it's lifelong. And in these poor children, minor trauma causes the skin to blister or slough off. They're called butterfly children for that reason, because the skin is as friable as the wings of a butterfly. It's also called the worst disease you've never heard of. It's very rare. It affects about 30,000 patients in the US, 35,000 or so across Europe, and about 5,000 here in the UK. And there's no available treatment whatsoever. Nothing has ever been shown to work in this disease. And our product Episalvin has shown promise in early studies in this disease, and that's why we're excited about developing it next in a pivotal study in EB, which we plan to commence in Q1 next year, which will read out for us in the middle of 2018, with a launch expected in 2019. We also have recently, as late as this week, announced a in-licensing of a new product called Lojuxta. Lojuxta is a marketed product. It's already on the market here in Europe. It's already being commercialized and has significant revenues. And it is a treatment for a different rare disease, a disease called homozygous familial hypercholesterolemia, which is a bit of a mouthful, but basically it is also a genetic disease whereby children are born with defects in their genes for the protein that manages their cholesterol, or the bad cholesterol, LDL cholesterol. And if you have two levels of cholesterol, even as early as in utero, and these kids are born with this condition, and left untreated, will have heart attacks by the age of 12 or thereabouts. So they urgently need a treatment. This is a lifelong disease, as I said. The treatment that we have in licensed Lojuxta is licensed for the treatment of adults with this condition. So these are adults who have been treated with this condition lifelong. Generally, the treatment, there are a number of therapies, but the Lojuxta product is focused on those patients for whom the other tablet therapies don't work, or these injection therapies don't work, and therefore they require to be attached to a machine to filter their cholesterol out of their blood, akin to dialysis. And this can be up to twice to filter out cholesterol. This is the only option available. It's called apheresis. So Lojuxta is a treatment, an oral treatment, a tablet that works very effectively at reducing the cholesterol in these patients. As I said, it was launched in 2013. It has material sales across Europe. We have recently in-licensed it from a company called Agerian, the same company that our Chief Medical Officer, Mark Summery, came from. And we are planning to grow the sales of that product across Europe and the Middle East in the coming years. We're really excited about it because Amryt was set up only 18 months ago. We've acquired 2 businesses in that time. We've listed in that time. We've raised capital from the market here in London. We've recently announced a deal from the European Investment Bank to raise 20 million euros, and this product, Lojuxta, now means that we have become a fully commercial pharmaceutical company with material sales in that time. So we're very excited about what has been achieved, and indeed we intend to add to this over time as we go.
In relation to your other product then, Imlan?
Imlan. So Imlan is a product that we acquired through the acquisition of our German business, Birken. It is also a commercial product. It's also a topical product. It's a dermatological product. The product was acquired as part of the Birken acquisition, as I said, and we acquired that company because we wanted to acquire Episalvin, which is the product for EB I mentioned earlier. With that deal came Imlan. Imlan is currently marketed just in Germany as a cosmeceutical. we are not in the cosmeceutical space. The revenues of the product is just under $1 million a year. What we plan to, we are looking at our strategic options for that product, and we think that there are options to make medical claims because the product actually has some very nice data. So we are looking at the ability to potentially CE mark that product and partner that product. That is not an area that we're going to focus at as business because it doesn't fit our business model.
Excellent. So in regards to the news flow on the products, obviously there's going to be a time frame between now and when these products are going to come to market fully. What is the business plan sort of between now and then? Is there potentially going to be acquisitions of other sort of orphan pharmaceutical products?
Well, as I said to you, in terms of the portfolio now, with the Lojuxta in-licensing that we've just announced, we actually have a portfolio which consists of a marketed product, so a commercial product. We believe that's a 50 million plus market in the licenses that we've in the territories rather that we've licensed. Behind that, as our second opportunity, is a product for EB. That is a very large market opportunity, and we're one pivotal study away from data and approval of that product, subject to that being a positive study. So we have that product coming through in data 2018 with launch in 2019. And then we also have, we haven't mentioned, but we do have an earlier stage product called AP102, which is a treatment for acromegaly, which is overproduction of growth hormone. But that's much earlier stage. So we are also developing that, but it's much earlier stage. In answer to your question, we are focused on developing these products. The development pipeline is now fully funded because we announced on Friday that we've arranged a very attractive facility from the European Investment Bank of 20 million euros. That fully funds our development pipeline products. In addition, the announcement on Monday of the Lojuxta in licensing gives us a cash generative product, which will be cash generative to the business from the start, and that's going to contribute to the business from the start. And we see significant opportunities to grow that product, as I said, across the territories that we've licensed. We also will look at selective acquisitions as we go. We set up the business to acquire, develop, and commercialize products in the rare and orphan disease space. And therefore, we will selectively look at other opportunities as they arise, but only those that will be value accretive to shareholders. So we're very selective in how we look at things.
In regards to your Epsilon product, you've obviously got the grant of the US patent there. Is the plan to put patents on all of your products that you intend to bring to market?
Yeah, we have got patents for pretty much all our products, or at least we have IP protection. The Lojuxta product benefits from data exclusivity, which you get once you get a product approved in Europe. So we have data exclusivity for Lojuxta to 2024, and our license for the product is to 2024 with the option at our behest to extend that beyond that time frame. Our Episalvin product for the treatment for EB, I mentioned, we have recently been awarded a patent for that both in the US and in Europe, and the terms of that patent is out to 2030. Our AP102 patent, or our product rather, has a IP protection in the US and has recently been awarded orphan status in the US. We are seeking orphan status also here in Europe. If you get orphan status for a product, I didn't mention this before, but if you get orphan status, once you are approved, you get a period of market exclusivity, which is 7 years in the US and 10 years here in Europe. So having orphan status is also an important factor here.
In relation to getting the orphan status, then, with obviously the products coming to market, if successful, would you say that because the product has been licensed via your channels, that you would tend to get the market share?
Well, we own these products. The license for Lojuxta, that was owned by the company Agerian, but they've licensed it now to us on an exclusive basis for the territories. The territories are Europe, Middle East, North Africa, Israel, and Turkey. So we have the full rights to the product in those territories. For our other products, we own the worldwide rights to those products. So as we are today, when we commercialize those products, those revenues will accrue to Amryt.
Right, Joe. I think I've covered everything I can cover my end. Is there anything else that you would like to add for our listeners?
No, just to say that to reiterate what I said earlier, we're really excited about the future of Amryt Pharma. We have accomplished everything we set out to accomplish in a very short time frame. We are delighted to have now become a fully fledged commercial pharmaceutical company, and we look forward to building on that in the future.
Joe Wiley, Chief Executive Officer of Amryt Pharma. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Steve.